And we are live, everybody. Hello. Thank you for being with us.
Hello.
Hi. So we have Natalie Taggart, right? How am I?
Tiger.
Taggart. Sorry.
Yeah.
All the years of French, I just want to say Target.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard it all. I've heard
I
it all.
know, right? I hear you. Same here. So Natalie actually goes by the Wealthy Witch, which is why I wanted to talk to her today. I love her work. I love what she's up to with this. She hits the nail on the head when she talks about money and being a witch and wealth, because I just told her I'm a closet witch. Actually, some people know I'm actually a witch out in the open. So, but it's getting to this sense of owning who you are, and also really looking at money and issues in your life. So, Natalie, tell everybody a little bit more about what you do, what you're up to with the Wealthy Witch. And then we'll start in some questions. And if anybody watching has questions, you can just go ahead and type them in, write a comment, ask anything, because seriously, we all know that money is like the biggest struggle everybody has at all levels. I don't care how much money you have. It's always a struggle. Yeah.
Or not. Or
I
we can
know.
make it not a struggle.
Exactly. Doesn't have to be.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Yes, I'm the founder and creator of The Wealthy Witch. I call it a financial empowerment company, right? Because it's really about empowering yourself, not only around money, but around sharing your gifts with the world. And it has been my experience, and it's been my experience of, hundreds now of my clients, that especially when we are intuitive, empathic, when we're healers, when we have these gifts to share with the world, there are a lot of money and visibility blocks that go with it. And so the whole premise is healing all of those so that you can not only share these magical gifts you have with the world, but also create the kind of wealthy lifestyle that you deserve and desire. So that's the whole nut in a nutshell.
I love it. And I wanted to bring you on because, I just wrote an email about this. This is so, I mean, in the email said this is so common at every level, whether people are making seven figures or they're just starting out, everybody kind of has the same issues. And it's funny you mention it, like intuitives, empaths, healers. I mean, I deal with a lot of, these clients. And everybody really struggles with this. And it's a very common thing, I found in the spiritual community, right? Like really charging what you're worth, whether you do service or healing or even making products. Like I coach some people who have product lines, and it's like, hey, wait a second. Have you ever added up how much time it actually takes you to create that? Like it's probably, most likely you're undercharging. Like most everybody seems to be undercharging. So, and I know these are who you coach and who you deal with. Now, what is going on here? Like, what is the problem with, all of us in this realm, especially in this, coming from a spiritual heart-centered place, but also having like these issues raising prices or asking for fair amounts of money? Like, do you know what goes on in the head?
I have many theories. Yes. And I see it as really a twofold issue. There's always like the outer kind of world issue, and then there's also our own inner stories, as within, so without, as above, so below, all that kind of stuff. And so the first thing that I want to speak to with that question is this idea that kind of in our society, in our overarching paradigm as it is now, for better, for worse, a lot of our gifts and this kind of work like hasn't been valued in the way kind of more hard hitting, concrete, like, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, like, people can kind of plug that in. And so we are shifting the paradigm here in that way. So there's that piece of just like historically that this kind of work hasn't been valued in that way. And then we, as the service providers, as the healers, as the, people who are offering this in the world, have the opportunity to heal and transform that within ourselves and say, you know what, like actually my gift is really valuable and this is important. And so I'm going to hold that vibration. I'm going to hold that energy and just, again, as within, so without, then other people will meet me here. The aligned clients will meet me in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how amazing is that ripple effect? I've seen it over and over again. Like, it's so powerful when it finally clicks in of like, oh my gosh, like this is life. I was just talking to a client earlier this week around, you know, she was questioning, like, can I really charge this for coaching? Like, I don't know. It's like, okay, like think about the kind of results that you create for your clients. And then think about like, okay, if you were to put a price tag on this result, like what might that be? And it was just like, oh my God, you know, you can't even put a price tag on, right? So from that space, it was like, oh, well, what I'm charging is like a no-brainer. And so I think it really kind of, we as, you know, the paradigm shifters have this opportunity to do that work for ourselves so that then we can start to change the overarching societal paradigm.
Yeah, it's so well said. I love it because I'm totally on the same boat. I'm like, no, this is a bigger thing. It's about changing our whole entire way of seeing the world, you know, seeing service-based, you know, like you said, how do you put a price tag on life transformation? Which essentially, like I always tell people, especially clients that are just starting out, you know, if you have one client, you know, you're really changing the world. Like, I don't care if you have one client, it's a domino effect. You know, you don't know who that person's then going to influence and change, and all the people around them change, and it's the whole world. You know, I always say, I have a client in the DC area, and I have this theory that I'm helping her, you know, reach more people, more women, and she's changing all of Washington, D.C., which to me needs the most change. So, you know, it's like that paradigm. I love it. Now, you also
said before, I live in LA now, but I lived in for 11 years, and so I totally like bless all the people who want to stay there. But I was like, I can't.
Yeah, you know, they need it. But no, I love, you know, it's like what you said. How do you put a price tag on, let's say, happiness, or you know, bringing your dreams to reality, or helping other people, you know, as a healer? And you're right about what you said. This used to not be valued, which of course now I find ridiculous, because I don't know where my life would be without all my guides and healers and coaches and just everybody along the way, you know, including people you don't even think of. But yeah, that's interesting. So how do you help people really break through, let's say, even, I've found people I've talked to on the phone, let's say, there's one that comes to mind that was charging a weird price, like $25 for 15 minutes. You know, she was a psychic or something. And I was like, wow, how do you make money?
Yeah.
Because it's like, then you don't have any consistency either. And she's like, well, I'm broke, but I'm really good. And I'm like, oh my God. So how do you get people then to go from like this really bottom rung of like worthiness to then going and asking for like, you know, a 3-month, just work with me for 3 months for whatever it is, $800 a month. Like, how do people like mentally, like, what's the trick to breaking through that?
That's such a good question. And I think I have a unique answer, is that, you know, we talk a lot about quantum leaps, or you hear a lot about like jumping from here to here. And I'm actually a big believer in small incremental upgrades, right? So I personally actually wouldn't coach someone from who's like that kind of low. I would say like, okay, let's getting you charging maybe like $50 for half an hour, you know, and then like it then happens deceptively quickly because you get that small win. You're like, oh my God, I can change this. And then it's like, oh, the 3-month package doesn't seem so far out of reach. But I've seen it actually in my own life. I have a story of like when I tried to go really big, really fast, and like not only my belief system, but my entire energetic system just like, you know, was like, whoa, like too much, too fast. And so there really is this space of like incremental leaps, but it is also, again, like an inner game thing of like, okay, like I do this exercise with pretty much every single client I've ever talked to of like, okay, the version of you who is like charging that, and I think it's a common coaching thing, but like your future self, or this version of you who has what you want, like, how is she approaching things? Like, how does she run her business? How much does she charge? And then acting from that place, like starting to take those first steps, is really powerful.
I love that. And I agree with you. I'm all about the baby steps. You know, I'm the same way. raise it little by little, you know, like it's like launching any business, like you do step by step. And yeah, if something's, you know, hugely challenging, yeah, you just do the first thing, you do the second thing. I
I think
love that.
especially totally. I think especially for new coaches, like as the industry kind of grows and matures, you know, there's a lot of comparisonitis and you're comparing your like step one to, you know, people who've been in business for 10 years. It's like, it's okay to start where you are. It's okay,
Yeah.
you know? So there's a lot of permission giving in that too.
Oh yeah, I mentioned the comparison thing in the email. The comparison, you know, all of us get caught in it. I was making a joke yesterday, and actually I want to write an email about this. I rarely checked my LinkedIn, and someone sent me something and I was like, oh, okay, I'll go check. And then I got some LinkedIn message that was like a bot, right? It was
Oh
clearly,
no,
yeah,
yeah.
it was clearly a bot. But initially, like my first reaction was like, oh my God, I need a LinkedIn bot too. Like, you know, this shiny object syndrome, like, oh, that coach just sent me like a bot, you know, and I was like, oh my God, I need to do this and this and this and this. And it's like, no.
Like, right, like two words that are like so far removed from how I run my business, like LinkedIn.
I know. And then I was like, but I hate LinkedIn. Like, I'm never even on there. So why would I even put any time and money into it? But it was that same, like you said, comparisonitis. Like, oh, I must then go invest in like a bot to go. And by the way, it was such a turn off too, because it was very like, hey, I didn't know the guy at all, but he was just some other coach. And it was like, hey, do you want my free this? And blah, blah, blah. And of course, I clicked on it and it was like a LinkedIn, like a LinkedIn freebie. So I was like, oh my God. But no, I love what you say. This, you know, like picturing your future self. Like, where is your future self, and what are the tiny steps to getting there? Now, what do you find most, you know, like most your clients and most people that go to the Wealthy Witch, like, what do you find people are really struggling with the most? Like, and how does one heal and make friends with money? Like, how do you heal this money relationship? Like,
And how much time do we have?
I know. Because I've been working on it on my own for many years, and it's like, my God, it runs so deep. Like, I've had like ancestral stuff and like deep, like, you know, it's like not just me and it's not just my parents. It's like passed down through, you know, it's like in our DNA as humans, it seems like this survival mechanism and this scarcity and this, but what are this, you know, like, are there any initial steps people can take? Like,
Yeah, totally. Oh, that's such a good question. So, yeah, most people who find me want to work on their money stuff, right? And money stuff. That's the technical term.
it's true.
And but oftentimes what I find the deeper issue is confidence. Like confidence in, can I really make the kind of money I want to make? You know, can I really charge this? You know, whatever question. For me, it was actually, you know, what set me on this whole journey was simultaneously my spiritual awakening and a ton of debt that I was like, oh gosh, like, can I really like get out of it? That was really my wake up call of like, I'm going to have to like make friends somehow with money because this is not sustainable. Right. And so the first thing that I think is the shift that when they find me is like, oh, I never thought about it that way, is the fact that money is a relationship just like anything else in your life. And, you know, like a friend or your partner or whatever. And so oftentimes we're so ingrained with this, money is scary. Money is never there for me when I need it. Whatever your like flavor of that is, like so we avoid money or we shame money or we're constantly like, oh, like, where are you? If we talk to a friend like that, like they wouldn't stick around either. Right. So it's like really starting to cultivate this practice of basically treating money how you would want to be treated and watching that shift, then how you're thinking about it, how you're feeling about it, how you are treating it like every day, which then creates more of the positive flow in your life. So that is the first thing that
Yeah, no, I love it. And I've heard other people say that, like, you know, really making friends with it. And, you know, a few years ago, someone said that to me. I was like, oh, I've never thought of it that way. Like, it's just the thing that comes and goes and causes me stress. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's been like,
Yeah.
there's been points of massive abundance and points of total debt. And it's like, oh my God, there's never just like a, a flow and a nice plateau. It's always been like up and down and up and down, like,
Yeah.
and a lot of other people, like friends, I've seen like the highest and the lowest of almost everybody I know, like people going into like utter bankruptcy,
Yeah.
and then people, making like 6-7 figures, a few years later. And it's like, oh my God. But I'm curious, do you do any of these weird, these, witchy kind of hacks? Like one of my friends told me, she was like, oh, you go get a whole bunch of bills, like singles, I guess. And then you like bathe yourself in the money and like throw it and like, I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
I haven't done it, but I'm like,
awesome.
That's fun.
Yeah. I do a lot of, I mean, manifesting in and of itself is, kind of witchy, but like checks from the universe. And, I mean, at this point, that's like kind of hard to answer. So it feels like my whole life is like a witchy ritual.
Yeah.
It is very much like kind of just become part of my practice. Like, my morning ritual, and like I'll do new moon intention settings and stuff like that, which I do in my group sometimes. And so there's a lot of, when we start to realize that money is just not like money, it's energy and it's a relationship, and we can start to like meet it at that level. That to me is like where the witchy part of Wealthy Witch like starts to come into play.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. One of my clients, or actually she's now a former client, but we still stay in touch. But she called me up the other week and was telling me about this mantra. And she's like, oh my God, ever since I've been doing this mantra, it's like that, the universe just money coming in, like random things, like a check in the mail and like multiple job offers and business consulting.
Yay, that's so exciting.
I know. And I was like, oh, just from a mantra, that's amazing. Cause I'm like you, I'm like, oh, the idea of manifesting is just part of my life. I don't really even separate it anymore. Cause I'm like, no, it's like everything. Like I make jokes. I'm like, my whole life is pretty much magic. And yeah, of course there's bad shit that happens and things don't go the way I want them to. But generally, I'm probably a lot like you. I'm like, oh, it's a gift. It's a gift that client didn't sign on, or it's a gift that it's been raining for 3 weeks straight, or whatever. But yeah,
I want to flip into that mindset, like really quick. Like, right, it's not about never getting thrown off, but about bringing yourself back more and more quickly, right?
Yeah.
And that is really where the practice is and the breakthrough is. And so it's like, okay, cool. Like, what happened recently is like, I don't remember exactly, but it was something where I was like, ooh, good job, Natalie. Like you pulled yourself out of that. Like super fast.
I know, I totally catch myself all the time. Like the second I go negative, like the second something like, or like I freeze up when I say my price, like, and then I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like, but I'm worth, like, I know I'm worth it. I'm like, I'm like, I had someone who I just gave like one tip to tell me recently, like he launched this whole business. And I'm like, wow, on like a 20-minute phone call. I'm like, damn, man, I'm good. I'm worth it. But yeah, like we all go into that, like, that fear, that not worthiness. Like this email I wrote was all about this. Like even people, I speak to people constantly that are like, oh yeah, I have a job and I make pretty good money and I have extra real estate and I have tenants, so I have income. And then I have this and I have that. And they're like, oh, but I can't afford you. And I'm like, wow, really? Like, what are you buying then? Like, of course you can,
Yeah.
But what do you say to people that are, kind of like stuck in that, like the mindset of money? Like, like you said, you have this morning, like a morning routine. And I know there's, affirmations, and there's really like owning the whole, like, I am worthy, or, I tell people to just practice saying your offering over and over and over. So it's like, you don't freak out when you say that you're like thousands of dollars, like
I have them practice in the mirror.
Yeah. And you just, it's like singing a song, and someone said to me years ago, saying the word, 400 versus 900, it's just like a mindset. There's actually no difference, you know? And she's like, oh, the same people will be able to pay you either way, you know? And I was like, oh, you're probably right. But what do you say to people that are really stuck in that, like, you know, just scarcity? Like they wake up every day and they just feel like they have nothing and the life is always a struggle. And I'm sure you get tons of clients that are like this, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, and I get asked, like, it's such a common thing. I think, I mean, at this point, when you're really stuck, like, I kind of start to dig into, like, okay, like, where, because there's always part of us that's create, right? We're powerful creators, we're creating everything. And so, like, if you're really attached to that scarcity story, like, what's the part of you that finds that safer than choosing gratitude, abundance, you know, wealth, whatever? So, like, starting to untangle that and even just gain the awareness of, like, oh, like, there's part of me that's choosing this, gives you your power back in that way. Because oftentimes when we're really stuck in scarcity, there's an element of victimhood, right? Of like, oh, like, life sucks, like, money's hard, you know? And so it's like, okay, well, if we're operating on the paradigm that we are creating everything in our reality, like, okay, what's having you create that? So that's the first thing. And that can really kind of like stop you short because you're like, oh shit, that's me. And then I've had lots of times when I just like haven't felt like, and I'll have clients too who are just like, I don't feel grateful. I'm so frustrated. Like, this is hard, whatever. And you can't quite like get there to the like, yay, my like amazing business is coming, right? So at that point, it's kind of like, okay, well, what can you look around at in your life in the present moment and just appreciate, not even feel grateful for, because sometimes we can't even get there, but it's like, can you go outside and appreciate that there's like a beautiful flower and like, just look at this beautiful flower, like sharing its gift with the world in its way. And can you just like really take that in and then appreciate that you probably have like really delicious, healthy food in your refrigerator and you like can't wait to eat it, right? Like, so then like that kind of gets the wheels turning and you're like, okay, like this does feel more possible. And then reminding clients too of like, look at all the other things that you've created in your life. Because sometimes too, when we're going after a big goal or we're really stretching ourselves, it's easy to be like, oh, like I can't do it. This is hard, you know? And just really reminding them and reminding yourself of like, oh, wow. Like my big thing actually is always like, I moved from DC to LA, like by myself without knowing anybody. Like, oh my God, like that's so cool. Like I can do anything, right? But I forget that sometimes. So like reminding yourself of all the times that it seemed really hard or really impossible. You didn't know how it was going to come together and like you did it anyway. And it's like, whoa.
Yeah. Oh, these are great. These, I know. And you're totally right. It's like people forget about the past. They forget about like the little feats, even like tiny ones, you know? But I love what you said about even appreciating smallest things. I always make jokes about, you know, like avocados, because like I would die without an avocado in my life. Or even like every time you go to use your cell phone, which I know everybody listening, it's many, many, many times a day. Like we take these for granted, but you know, this little device that we carry is not available to everybody on the planet. You know, it's not like everybody has a cell phone, and a lot of people even
like smartphone.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, what an amazing thing. It's with us all the time. Or even clean water out of the tap is like, you know, it's like the very basics. So I love that you're teaching this.
It's so great. One thing that feels important that I want to add is this, especially when it comes to manifesting money. 9 times out of 10, like clients come to me and like want to manifest something because they feel that scarcity, right? There's something missing. And so they want to call something in. But, and this is kind of manifesting 101, but like if we're sitting in that scarcity energy and we're gripping, trying to like call it in, it's not going to work. So that practice of being really grateful and really appreciative right where you're at and getting that vibe going, and then being like, okay, well, I want to grow because it's the nature of the universe to expand. And like, I am part of the universe and I am just expanding in alignment with my soul. Then it's like, oh, cool, this feels so joyful and possible. And it removes that kind of like grippy tension that so many of us can have around money.
Yeah.
So that just felt like an important nuance.
Yeah, like healers, one thing I've said to them, and you've probably said this too, is like, okay, you need the money to support you so that you can then start growing as, as a healer, as a person, as, your business, so you can actually help more people, and then they help more people, and they help more, and this is literally like you said, we're the paradigm shifters, we're changing the world. And so, it's like, it's a good thing to accept in money for your services, because if you weren't supported, you wouldn't be able to go help people,
100%. One of my favorite phrases to like rail against or make fun of, because I was super guilty about this in the beginning too, is this idea of like, I don't really care about the money. I just want to help people.
Trust me, I've been there. I still do some pro bono for friends, but trust me, I have my boundaries, and there's only a little, and half the time it's like we do some kind of trade anyways. But that's like two people, and it's not very often. But I was
sessions. I make it a practice as again, like kind of being in that generosity. But I think like that phrase is like, okay, there's so much to unpack there, and I've been guilty of it. And it's such a thing in our world. And it's like, actually, like you said, you actually do have to care about the money if you want to live and offer your gifts, right?
Yeah. So. And they don't, I mean, the reality is I compared it in my email. They don't value your services as much when it's either free or very cheap. And I keep saying it's like having, like one of those crappy free t-shirts you get at some like event. And most of the time you're just like, oh, free t-shirt, whatever. And you throw it in the back of your drawer. Or versus like your favorite pair of shoes that cost a lot of money that you invested into, and, you keep them really clean. I'm like, okay, which one do you value more? Like if your shoes were ruined versus your t-shirt ruined by, whoever. Yeah, it's the same thing. I'm like, okay, I know this because when I first started out a while ago, I had one client that was like pretty low price, and he didn't take any of the coaching. He didn't do anything. And honestly, he didn't go anywhere with it. So it was like, oh, I learned that quick. Like, you can't charge too little because no one will get the results,
That happened to me too. My very first client was a friend that I coached for free, and she didn't do anything. And so it was it's a powerful wake up call if you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, no, I love it. Now, do you have, one last piece of advice for people out there that are like, I can't afford anything, or I'm just not good with money. They have this mindset of like bad money. Like, what is the one mental shift that they can do besides, like the daily appreciation of things? Like anything else? Swimming in pools of money.
Yeah. Someone who's really stuck.
Yeah.
It's such a mental game. And so really realizing that scarcity is just a story that you're continuing to tell yourself, and you can always choose a new choice, and you can choose a new choice right now. Another thing is that like scarcity may feel really real, but it's not. I wish I was more eloquent.
No.
Like, we can look at our bank, especially when we're kind of like really in the like looking at our bank balance being like, oh shit. But I think when you can be in that space and choose to maintain your emotional equilibrium, like that's when the real magic starts to happen. So
I love it. No, it's so true. And it's so funny because some of the most abundant people I know, it's like the scarcity, it just doesn't cross their minds. And they're actually, they're not mega loaded. They're just like total abundance mindset, and they manifest like crazy, like
totally.
Trips, airplanes, like like I make jokes that I manifested this like business class vacation, like all expenses paid. And it was like, I mean, I just at the time I was like in this really high vibration abundance mindset, and I was like, wow, that was easy. And of course life, it comes and goes like that, but it's all the mindset, and it's all that like deep inner work. And really, you're right, realizing it's a story because we're surrounded by abundance everywhere. And it's, and I always remind people it's not permanent either. Like all of us have gone into debt at some point. Like I don't know anyone that didn't go to college that didn't go into some kind of debt, like everybody's had some sort of a debt. And, but then it like comes and it goes, it's like impermanent.
And like flipping out the lens, the image that just came to me is like, those viewers from the 90s.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like you can change the picture. Like
Mm.
you can change the picture.
Exactly. So. This has been so good. So tell everybody more where to find you and what you're up to. Like you have a program. Is it a group or private?
Yes.
Or?
So, oh my gosh, so many things. So you can find me at wealthywitch.com. That's the website. I'm super active on Facebook. That's probably the best place to find me day to day. And yeah, there's a group program coming out in the fall called Wealthy Witch Academy. And in the meantime, you can go to my website and download a free guide that I've created on the Wealthy Witch Way, which is the Wealthy Witch, a 5-step framework for getting yourself out of scarcity and stepping into your wealthy life. So if you just go to my website, it's free guide, like right at the top. Can't miss it.
Love it. I love it. Thank you so much for doing this. I could talk about this stuff forever, of course. Forever, I know. I'm like, I have to keep these to 30 minutes because I think I think Facebook algorithms like 30 minutes. That's what I've heard. I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up. Or they probably changed it.
It's a good time frame. Yeah.
I know. I'm like, they probably changed it last night, like for all I know.
Yeah, right? Like you never know. Well, thank you so much for having me.
This is so awesome. I feel super abundant and inspired right now. I'm like,
good. Go manifest something.
I know. I'm like, there'll probably just be a check in the mail,
You never know.
I'll let you know. Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye. Uh-oh, my stuck.